shortly after we finished the last one was when we first started saying like, what should we do next time? Like we should do this again. Where do we pick up after this? And I think generally speaking, we brainstormed on and off. And then, like life happens, and before you know it, 2 years have passed, and, we've moved and gone and done other things and all that kind of stuff. But it was never something that was far out of our heads. In all honesty, like I think it was last year, there was an attempt, like we walked right up to the line of doing it again, to the point where, and it would have been an all different storyline and everything. Jeremy had actually almost finished making a whole new theme song, which is not the one that we use this year. So that might be something that we revisit or like go back and tweak a little bit again. But it's something that we've constantly been thinking about.
Movies on video cassette.
Welcome to Strange Glow Video.
Guys, I'm eating junk and watching rubbish.
We're oozing with VHS, horror, nostalgia, and more.
New better block glow in the dark.
After it drops a videotape, you can get a glow-in-the-dark hand puppet from the movie Casper.
And now, your hosts, Alec, Justin, and Nick.
Hey, you're not allowed to rent here anymore. Yeah!
All right, welcome back to Strange Glow Video. My name is Justin. With me is my esteemed colleague, Alec. And tonight we have a special set of brothers joining us. You may know them from previous episode a couple of years back for an Ectober special. But welcome, John and Jeremy, the Yurcaba brothers.
Hello. What's up?
I feel like we should talk to you guys a lot more often than we do, really, because you guys are kind of in that same wheelhouse we are. It's like the complementary brothers that all have creative outlets and do things, and I don't think everyone has that in their back pocket. So,
yeah, it's definitely a unique experience when, like you said, when you've got that person who's like in your life, they always have been, and you both like doing creative stuff and can find ways to collaborate and do stuff together. Like you guys have the podcast and everything, so it's cool. It's like having a built-in creative partner. Like when you hear about people who do TV shows and movies and they're like, yeah, we direct together or we write together, or like a writing team or whatever, stuff like that. It's cool to have that person who's like, I smell what you're cooking.
Yeah, the Russo brothers, the Duffer brothers, like that whole kind of vibe. And I think you guys complement each other really well as far as like your styles, because you have that overlap where you work together well, but then you also have like your own little specialties on the side. And I think that really goes a long way for when you guys come together and do these Ectobers, because they're pretty awesome.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine doing Ectober without Jeremy. Like it literally is two halves of a whole. and I knew from the jump when I was like, you know what I want to do? I want to draw some stuff. Literally thought number 2 was just like, and I want Jeremy to make music for it. So
yeah, see, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, the way when you were saying that we complement each other, it's kind of funny how we fell into these like pockets, because John, he does music too. And I also draw. It's just we kind of shifted our focus to one or the other, and it kind of freed up our hands to, really get in and be that team where some of his skills may be specialized here, mine are over there. We just kind of carry each other along, man.
And we speak enough of the same language too that like if I'm drawing something, I'm like, this isn't working. Jeremy can come in and be like, what if you did it from this perspective or this thing? Or if like, Jeremy's working on a song, he's like, does this sound right to you? I'm like, what if you take it up an octave or whatever? So like, even though we both ended up specializing in different things, there's like a base level of like, I know what you're talking about. Hold on, let me try something.
Exactly.
Yeah, I definitely get that. We played in a few bands together too. So We've also worked on some short films, some like local films together. We've done a lot of different creative things together, but also apart. So
Yeah, it's always nice
fun.
to have that fallback of like, hey, there's a creative partner you have that's kind of built in for life. So, right, you know, and you're out there exploring, doing your own things, but you always have that like person to bounce ideas off and go back to, just because it's like a inner circle person that's trusted and well respected for, you know, you value their opinion.
100%.
Right.
All right.
So
So,
because
all right, Alec.
All right, I'll give you one more time. Interrupt me again. Come on. You can do it. No, third time's a charm. But I was just going to say, before we get too deep into the art stuff, I wanted to get these musical questions out of the way, because they aren't exactly relevant to your creative outlets of music, but they could be in an influential way. But I haven't talked to anyone about the new Blink-182 album yet.
Oh,
Anybody
boy.
listen to that?
I have
not. Not yet. No.
Oh, damn.
Did we just?
figured
Did we
there's
just
a
wipe out all your
chance.
questions?
No. That was one of them.
Okay, cool.
The other one was just, you know, how is it that the Black Parade turned 17 today?
No,
Oh my
no, we're
gosh.
not talking about that. Next question. I had a moment like that. Oh, what was it? Honestly, I've been having moments like that so much more frequently now, and it bothers me because, like, I told this to my wife. I said, you know, I feel really lucky in that, like, I get to, for the most part, like, it's my job to sit down and draw. Like, everything that I loved as a kid, cartoons, comic books, all that stuff, like, I have now put myself in a place where people pay me to make that stuff and make new stuff. And it's really cool. And it feels like it's weird to say like it keeps me young, because I feel like I've just never needed to like grow out of it. But yeah, I mean, like it keeps me young, right? And but then like inevitably something will happen. It feels like the universe is just like, oh, we're gonna find a way to make you feel old. And it's usually when I realize, like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but like to me, the 80s will always feel like, oh yeah, that was 20 years ago, right? And it's like, no, the 80s is like 30 plus years ago now. Was it like 40 years ago? Yeah. Like
1983 is
was,
40, yeah.
Yeah. And so it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. And then that reminds me, like, oh yeah, I'm 35. Like I'm not, I think I well, I think I always just feel like I'm perpetually on the verge of turning 30. Not in like a like not like a maturity level, but in a sense of like I feel that young. And that's not the case. And then I see stuff like, hey, like there's an Instagram profile that I follow that it's like emo pop punk news, and it's like, hey, here's all your favorite emo albums that are turning 20 this week, and literally like every week they post an update. I'm like, this is not right.
Yeah. That's sketchy. So I turn 40 next year. So, you know, like that's like I've come to terms with that. Well, thank you. Yeah. So I feel like I've aged pretty well, but I mean, I think for me, like one of those existential crises that I almost had, but then I quickly got over, were like when I turned 35, I was like, I think I have to work till I'm about 70 now, is kind of what they're saying for like my demographic.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm like, you mean to tell me that I have as many more years of work ahead of me as my entire existence to this point? Like I had a really hard time wrapping my head around that for a minute at 35. And I was like, oh man. But finally I got over it. But it was just like, oh, now I'm pushing 40 and I'm like, all right, well, I guess the, you know, they say like 40 is the new 20 or whatever, you make those catchphrases up to feel better about your day to day. So
I'll take that. 40 is the new 20. I like it.
Man, but I think it's a mindset though too, right? I think that's something that our generation's done a better job of capturing, is not outgrowing the things that bring you joy in your life, right? There's not an excuse. It's like, yeah, you may take time away from it, but just because I'm not in a band right now doesn't mean I wouldn't play in one again later. It doesn't mean I'm not like still practicing and playing at home. So I think it's that mindset, and I think being a pop culture fan really provides that for me to like to stay young and just like stay relevant. And then the other thing I think that, at least in my generation, I know there's a lot of people that really lose themselves to not listening to new music. And I think that, to me, like that's a definitive point of like turning into an older person is when you stop finding new music, because like I think I really do. I think, but I'm still listening for new music.
No,
I'm
I'm feeling personally attacked right now.
but I have to go out and search it. But there's still lots of bands you would like out there, right? So I just accidentally came across this band the other day called Sincere Engineer. They're out of Chicago.
Okay.
They're really good, like emo, kind of on the verge of pop punk, indie rock, right? And they really have something kind of unique and fresh. And when I first heard it, I was like, oh, okay. So it fits in my wheelhouse, but it's also new, it's fresh. And same thing with the band Spanish Love Songs. Like, they've been around for about a decade now, but their last 2 albums have just been absolutely phenomenal. And so I think finding new music keeps you young. It keeps you exploring the world. Like, never stop exploring is kind of like what I think. Like, if you're finding new things to enjoy, you're always going to feel young, no matter like what your body tells you otherwise, at least in your mind.
Oh, 100%.
Definitely.
100%. And I think that's when you're a creative person too, that ends up fueling your own creative process. Like when you're able to, it's something that I think a lot of people get stuck in, is just that sense of like, I've already seen all the things I need to see, heard all the things I need to hear. And even if I'm going to sit down and create something, it's going to be me like recycling, regurgitating, just like cannibalizing all of my nostalgic feelings and vibes to make something that looks exactly like or feels exactly like the things that I already know I like. And I think whether it's with music or TV shows or comics or whatever it is, books, I think the more that you can kind of like just continue to take in new influences and new things that expand your awareness, expand your, like your ability to find the pulse of different things, and let that influence you, and let that be a part of your inspiration. I feel like it only makes your creative endeavors better.
Absolutely. I think you have to be searching for new items to influence you. Like, right, as an artist, it can be very challenging to overcome certain things. Like, right, I don't work in a creative industry right now, but originally I was going to school for graphic design and that type of stuff. And that killed my passion for a while for creating art and stuff, just because it was like so mundane and like so by the book of doing what other people wanted. And I was like, wait a second, do I really want to do that? And I was like, I would rather have this as a hobby and love it for my entire life than to like sacrifice myself and put myself in this situation at that moment. And like, that's a hard thing to learn, but there's a lot of people out there that are creative all day and they still find ways to be more creative elsewhere. And so no matter what you do, I think if you're able to go and kind of understand yourself in that level, it's going to make whatever you do as a hobby that much more enjoyable, or whatever you do as a career that much more enjoyable, right? Because there's things I would love to do, I'm working towards, and I think you just can't be afraid of change and pivoting if you need to, right? I think so many people get caught up in feeling like they're stuck where they're at, but there's always other options. You just have to be brave enough to go out and pursue those.
Yeah.
So Jeremy,
Pep talk.
yeah, what have you been doing musically lately?
Working on Ectober.
Yeah.
The reason we're here. And also, I just wrapped up I was composing music for a local theater production.
Oh, very nice.
That was fun. It's a very Little Shop of Horrors style kind of. It's about a vampire who accidentally buys a diner, and then all heck breaks loose. So it was
that sounds intriguing. I would definitely like to hear that. So
yeah, definitely. I'll if they end up putting anything out, I will direct you towards it.
Absolutely,
Sure.
Yeah.
don't let him undersell it either. I got to hear one of the tracks while he was working on it, and I was just like, "This came out of your brain, dude!" Like, all right, all right.
Yeah, it definitely helped me stretch my legs a bit from a like compositional aspect, because like how you were talking about not being afraid to take different influences into account when you're being creative. Um, they needed like an Italian tango at one point, so I had to write something that was not normally something I'd be writing for people I work with, but was definitely a lot of fun to write. It's like the things that you learn when you're in school, the things that you're like, this is fun, but I'm probably never going to use it. But when someone lets you like run free with it, it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So are you still playing in a band at all?
We are taking it slow. Life happens. I'm still in my band Misty Eyed, where I play the drums and help compose some of the additional instrumentation. I remember for our last EP that we put out, Samsara, I ended up having to record myself opening a can of tangerine sparkling water in time with the song to get the percussive notes, and that was really fun.
That's the beautiful thing about recording music. Like Alec and I both went to school for audio engineering, and so like when you find those little silly things that you can add in the background or add to a musical composition, it just makes it fascinating.
Exactly. What did the guy who helped us record our EP, his name's Peter, he called it ear candy, and ever since he like put a label to it, I've been obsessed.
Nice. I like that. Ear candy. Yeah. So John, you've been obviously very busy doing all kinds of art out there, a lot
Yeah,
of
man.
comic book covers, and it's so awesome to see. Like, you've always had the talent there, so like when you finally finish there and you're like out there doing this now, like how does that feel for you?
Oh man, it's I think it's such a weird feeling. I think a lot of artists, and I'm sure a lot of just creators in general, and in every creative field, they're, you know, that to some degree you kind of have to put in at least a little bit of work ahead of time before you find anybody who's like paying attention to you, because you have to have something to show off.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's easy to kind of get into a groove of just losing yourself and doing that and producing work just to like get noticed, you know, like to feed the algorithm or however you want to put it. And and you kind of lose sight of like a lot of it comes from, you know, meeting people and like being a part of the community. And I think that between between doing Ghostbusters Fan Fest in was that 2019?
Yeah.
Um between doing that, that was a lot of like, hey, I'm going to kind of purposefully, instead of just I was stuck in this cycle for a long time of thinking like if I just keep drawing, I'll be plucked from obscurity. And literally between 2019 and 2020, I, you know, prior to the pandemic, I was making a more like outwardly concerted effort of like, hey, if I'm around certain people, certain things, like I want to make sure I'm meeting people, you know, introducing myself and genuinely trying to like make friends. It's not all just like, you know, uh calculated hollow cold networking for the sake of, you know, gain or anything. It's genuinely like you want to, if you want to be a part of a community, you be part of a community. And uh and I think just in that, you know, effort to kind of like be a part of just the art and the comics community, it was cool to start making those connections, and those connections start leading to things. And yeah, it still feels surreal. Like I don't know that I've ever had at this point like a cover hit the shelves and gone and seen it in a store and not had like this little emotional moment to myself where I'm just like, especially with like Godzilla, like I remember vividly just kind of like walking up to the new this week shelf in the comic shop, and I'm just like, yo, why is something I drew like sitting next to the newest issue of Green Lantern? This doesn't, why is this here? Who put this here? Am I getting punked?
Hmm.
But I don't think it's a feeling that'll ever get old. Um, and yeah, it's just, it, part of it feels like a long time coming in the sense of like I've been working toward that for a while. And part of it also feels like this isn't real. What's happening right now? Um, but yeah, I'm very glad to have been able to do the stuff that I've done so far, for sure.
I actually had one of how you were like, this can't be real. I went and picked up one of your issues, and I went up to the guy at the counter, and I was like, look, my brother drew this, and he definitely was like, yeah, sure, okay. I was like, no, you don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, look,
I
here's
was
his
having a
name,
whole
and here's the
moment,
credit
and he
card
was
angle.
like, just pay me and take the comic book, please.
Oh man.
Yeah, I remember that was that Transformers cover. That was the first one to hit shelves, right?
Yeah, was it Beast Wars number 11, I think.
Yeah, and so I remember like I couldn't find that in stores locally, so there's a Graham Cracker Comics is who I usually order through online. They're out of Chicago.
Mhm.
They have a pretty good selection of that, but I was like, I got to get that just because I need to have John sign that like next time I run into him, just because like that's his first like on the stand cover. Like that's huge for somebody that you know, right? And like just being able to support that and have that in your collection, and people would like flip through your collection, be like, that's a random issue to have. They're like, well, that's a support my friend, right? That's his first cover on the newsstands, right? So like you have to kind of have those things in the collection.
Yeah, man.
So
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's, I mean, even with that issue still, like when like people are finding it not on like the brand new shelves anymore, but I think they that one, and then I think for Godzilla, like the Godzilla stuff I just did, they ended up using one of my covers for the trade paperback. So when you get the graphic novel version, my cover's on the front, and it's still, it always it's that same feeling anytime someone, finds something I did in the wild, or they tag me and they're just like, yo, had to support the homie, and it's, something I did and they're buying it. It's like it's this weird feeling of like you sit here and you stare at the thing you're working on for however long it takes you to work on it, and it just feels like any other thing that you have sitting on your desk that you see on a daily basis. But then when there's that moment of like, oh, now it's in the wild and other people seeing it and finding it and posting about it, it's like, oh, this is a thing. And so yeah, it's really cool to have people go out and look for that stuff or come up to me at conventions and be like, hey, I got your thing, this is so cool, can you sign it?
yeah, I think that's awesome. I mean, like for me, the most relatable thing would be like when people started like buying band shirts from bands I was in, like wearing those around. You're like, oh man, someone's wearing my band shirt. That's really cool, right? And
Yeah,
like you have that
yeah,
moment of pride, but to have that in like other asset or other areas too, I would say is like, that's got to be incredible. So
I get that
Yeah.
way. I remember I used to do I was like Jeremy's built-in roadie for a while when he was still living in Phoenix, and I would, it was another thing where it's just the benefit of like speaking a shared language where like if I was with him, I could, help him set up his drums quicker while he was handling other stuff or shaking hands and kissing babies or whatever. And but then watching him play and seeing everybody respond to it and all that kind of stuff, it's that same kind of like walking the weird line of like, I'm used to this. Like I literally watched him do this every afternoon of his life while he was still living at home and all that kind of stuff. And like I've jammed with him since we were like kids, and then to see him doing it, it's like, yeah, this makes sense. But then it's like you have that, it's like double vision of like you see it from the one angle, you're like, oh yeah, he's doing the thing, he's good at this, I've seen him do this so many times. But then you notice all the other people and you're just like, he's doing it, I'm so proud.
yeah, I think that really, kind of shapes up. I remember going the first time I saw Alec playing a band because I used to like get Alec out of the house when I was playing like shows with my band, and so I'd like drag him along to a bunch of shows just to get him out, and he'd come hang out and kind of be part of that culture. So I know for me it was like a pretty big moment to see him go play his own show with his own band and stuff. And like, yeah, we played in a band together after that, but just to be able to see that and say, okay, yeah, here's where you came from. And
what band was that? I don't even remember the first band that you saw me playing.
That was Center Lane, and you played at Jerry's Bait Shop in Lee Summit when it was still open. So yeah,
that was
nice.
We were already in Brian and the Humans at that point though, because that was towards the end of Brian and the Humans.
Yeah, but I think that was the first band you were in that like I saw you go out and kind of like,
oh yeah,
you're doing your thing in your own world, right? It wasn't like,
well, that's interesting too, because I grew up, you were playing in a street punk band and then a pop punk band, and then it was basically just fucking, emo. So
yeah,
I didn't ever really get a chance to play much of that music until your other band, V-Card Vengeance, had a reunion, if you will, and they added me on keyboard and like third guitar for some things. So I was switching back between guitar and keyboard, and I was like, I'm the coolest person in this band for this.
Oh yeah.
If you're cool as shit when you're like, yeah, let me just play this yellow card violin line on the keyboard over here, and then
oh my gosh, that's
nice.
amazing.
Play some chuggy shit over here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like, well, that's the other thing. Like a lot of people don't appreciate like those utility musicians as much as they should, right? You think about how many touring bands have somebody that just joins on there, like they're not on the recordings necessarily,
but
they're like out there picking up all these extra parts that someone like composed and put on there, and I think that's a really cool thing to be able to do. So
yeah, that's the first time I saw James DeWeese, was him playing keyboards for My Chemical Romance and like Memphis in May in like 2008 or some shit.
Nice.
That's awesome.
And then later I got to see him with the Get Up Kids. So
nice.
That's awesome. I've seen a ton of Reggie in the Full Effect shows, so
I never got to see one. Always wanted to.
He's actually just playing now. He hadn't posted in like 3 years, and I saw him post today that he's like playing a show somewhere. He's down in San Antonio actually, and I was like, oh man. Huh.
I remember it was really cool when me and Jeremy were kids. One of the first things I showed him how to play on any instrument was Never Take Friendship Personal by Amberlin.
Yeah.
And that was one of our favorite bands. It always has been. And we used to jam out to that. And then we would like play some other stuff too over time. But like, I went and saw them once while I was still living at home. And then a couple more times after I left the house, just because they had come to whatever city I was living in. And then they broke up, and I always felt bad because I was like, man, like, I wish Jeremy had gotten a chance to see them. I wish, we had gotten to see them together. Like, I feel like that was such a formative band for both of us. And then they literally like announced that they were getting back together and they were going to go on a tour and everything. And as soon as I saw that they posted the dates, I was like, there's no way we're missing this. And so in 2019, like it was right before the pandemic hit, we actually got to go and see Anne Berlin together, and that was pretty sick.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, like it was a full circle moment, because like I haven't even thought about that for the longest time, that was probably the first piece of music I ever played. And then we like went back through and learned the entire album and annoyed our family for hours playing those songs every day.
Yeah. I remember feeling especially proud when we figured out how to play why am I having a brain fart right now?
Paper Thin Hymn?
No, the other big one.
Oh, Godspeed.
No.
No. Oh, Feel Good Drag. Sorry.
Yes, Feel Good Drag. Yeah. I remember because that one, I did something about it at the time, at least. I was like, man, this one's real complex. I don't know if we're ready for it. And then I just remember like taking the time and figuring out like, okay, if you play this on the bass and I play this on the guitar, I think we'll have it. And just like going back and forth and stuff. And then, yeah, to like both of us as adults be like right there in front of the stage while they're playing it live. I was just like, look, you remember how we used to do this? It's so cool.
I think that's such a unique experience though to have with siblings, right? I don't think everyone gets to do that. And so I think that really, especially to the creative types, right? I think I got Alec the Ramones' first record for Christmas one year, you know, and like he started teaching himself bass based on that album. You know, it's like it's all panned left and right. So if you're playing bass, yeah, you throw your headphones on, you can play along super easy because it's all panned hard, right?
Yeah.
And so it makes it easy to learn. And so like he was picking those songs up and kind of coming around to those. Obviously, that's a band like you could not see, but we've been to a ton of shows together though. So I mean, I think, do we have any bucket list bands we haven't seen together yet?
Well, we didn't actually. Here's the thing. 2004 was the first time I think I went to a big show with you, and it was Warped Tour that year.
Oh, nice.
And it was like,
that's one thing I wish I had been able to go to at least once is Warped Tour.
Oh, let me tell you, I've been to I think 4 of them over the years, and they got progressively worse. At least in my opinion, like because 2004 is really good, 2006, and then I think 2008 and 9 I went. But like 9, I just did not have a good time. I didn't see any bands I liked because like the ones I liked weren't in Kansas and stuff. And I was like forced to go see, no offense if you like them, feel free to, but Chiodos, and I just wasn't a fan. So I was like, that's the only thing I remember about it was dying in that pit because my girlfriend at the time was like, let's go look at this band. And I was like, sure. Yeah, this is, you're walking right into the pit. We're going to die.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
Yeah.
Was 2004, was that the year I played?
Yes.
Okay.
Yo, you played Warped Tour?
We just played the Kansas City date, but yeah.
That's cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We played the same time as Yellow Card though, like during Yellow Card in 2004. So we still had a fairly decent turnout of people that were like anti, like you know, like the punkers that were there were like, yeah, man, fuck the mainstream and all that kind of stuff, you know. So we had some like the hardcore
cool, though, man.
Yeah,
no, that's awesome. I was there and watched like the first half of your set, but then the Vandals played and I had to skedaddle.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I
was
would have
like-
done the same thing.
I'd already seen the Vandals, so I wasn't mad because they put on a hell of a show. They're a fun band.
This
to
is
see.
like my first
Definitely.
fucking punk show of any sort. And then you were like, all right, let's go check out this band. I've been listening to them for a little while. They're you know, they're called Taking Back Sunday. And they're on stage and they're like, our new album, you know, what is it? Where You Want to Be comes out next week.
Oh,
that was their
the
second
second
album. Yeah, it was
Is that what it's called though?
yeah,
The one with the fucking
Trying to
naked kid on the front. You know what I'm talking?
yeah, that's the
2004.
first album with that was the first album with Fred after the other guys quit. So yeah, that was pretty cool
man.
seeing them that early on.
I remember
that-
when I was in high school, I used to have a chemistry and physics teacher. It was like freshman year, so they put them both together. But like, he was a part-time radio DJ, and whenever like the day before tests and stuff, it would be like, okay, today we're just going to go over all the test questions and do just like a quiz and talk about any questions you guys have. So that way, tomorrow coming in, like you will know what's on the test and you'll be ready to pass it. And if you got a question right, he would like give you stuff like, I don't know, candy or, you know, whatever. And sometimes he would have like extra demo CDs from like his radio DJ stuff. And I remember one time he was handing out CDs and he was just like, he's like, I've listened to this. I played it on my station a couple of times already. Trust me, this is like, these guys are going to be huge. I promise you. Like a year from now, like if they played live right now, you could probably get in pretty easy, pretty cheap. But a year from now, you're not gonna be able to get anywhere near these guys. I was like, all right. And like, regardless of if you like them or not, like it was the demo CD for Maroon 5 and it had Harder to Breathe on there. And literally within like 3 months, that song was all over the radio. And it was just that kind of like that feeling of like, whoa, I heard this before it was a thing. Like it's so cool to watch that happen.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I remember that with two bands specifically. Like I was listening to, I had bootlegged versions of Panic at the Disco's demos for like months
Oh,
and
wow.
months before their album ever came out. And then once the album came out, I was like, man, I don't like these recordings as much because I listened to the other ones so fucking much. You know, it's you just get used to it.
Yeah,
And then
you
you
get
hear the
used
other ones,
to
and you're like,
it, yeah.
"Mm."
Yep.
Hello Goodbye was the same way though. Like
Oh,
I was
wow. I have not
listening to
thought
all
about
their
Hello
demos.
Goodbye in so long, man. That was, oh, man, I feel like I'm 16 again.
Yeah.
Dang.
So I
And
mean,
then
for
they
me,
kinda-
when we played Warp Tour that year, there's a band that before I was a senior in high school, like my parents were out of town and I was staying home, and there's a band came through on Victory Records called River City Rebels, right? And
Mhm.
they played a small show and they played their hearts out, like, and there's only probably like 10 people in the audience because it was like a weeknight in the summer, and they'd only had one album out and they just weren't very big here yet, and they needed a place to stay. So everyone there, like the friends I was at the show with, like, well, your parents are out of town, just have them come over. Okay, so like I had this band of, it's like they're like a punk band, but they had a couple of horns in it, but they weren't ska at all. They didn't have any ska riffs at all. But
they're like
Okay.
Baroque punk almost.
yeah,
Nice.
Oh, okay.
That's cool.
and so I have this huge van and trailer parked in front of the house, and no one said anything to my parents. Like no one ratted me out, and like no one got mad or
That's
anything.
awesome.
Like, you know, like I had all these guys stay there, and they came over there, and yeah, it was kind of one of those crazy things. So I got to play at that band a couple of times when they came through, and so we got to play the stage that they were out touring with for the Warped Tour that year. So I was like, oh, that was a pretty cool highlight.
Very cool,
Yeah.
man.
I mean, I remember we drove to a show to see, I can remember 3 bands on the bill. I don't remember, well, 2 bands and God, what's that rapper? Who the fuck was it?
Is
Paul
it
Wall?
Chance? I heard he was a rapper.
It was Paul Wall.
Yeah,
Paul Wall when he toured with Fall Out Boy and Plus 44.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
and that was Cobra Starship opened that show, I think.
Oh, okay.
Oh, man.
Definitely.
And that was in
remember
St.
Cobra
Louis because we drove up from we were living down basically in Memphis at the time, and we drove up to St. Louis for that show. And then drove
Did you
back
ever
to
get to? I'm sorry. Did you ever
So-
see Angels and Airwaves?
I have not, no.
Mhm.
Oh, I saw him at Warped Tour 2008. I want to say. I think so. Anyway,
I'm
I
still
had
stuck
a,
on Cobra Starship because now that song from Snakes on a Plane is stuck in my
Oh my
head.
gosh.
Oh, I'm ready for it.
yeah.
Come on, bring
That's a
me
great
in.
movie too.
So
Yeah,
kiss
so-
me goodbye.
Yeah, so
I've
Cobra
been-
Starship took a long time off, and they've actually thrown out a couple of new songs here in the last couple of years.
Oh,
I think
cool.
it's back to just what's his face though. I think it's just him again.
It very well
Mm.
could be, but yeah, it was like because he put out one with like a DeLorean on the cover. It's like a pretty catchy song, but it was just a single.
Well, a lot of these. Have you ever? I was going to bring that up. I've been going back recently. Like for a long time, I was just kind of not listening to a lot of these nostalgic bands, and I've been recently listening to a fuck ton of My Chemical Romance, and then I was like, all right, let's go back and see what else I remember. And I was listening to stuff that was big for me, and it was like the Silence and Black and White, Hawthorne Heights. I was like, what
Mhm.
happened to Hawthorne Heights? They do anything else? They fucking
Dude,
never
did you
broke up.
see- Did you see that they're doing the what is it? The emo orchestra thing now?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
That new
looks pretty
song,
cool.
The Storm. It's actually
Mhm.
like I haven't listened to all of the stuff they've released since God knows when, but I went back and listened to some of the newer stuff, like their newest release that came out like either this year or last year. It was pretty decent. And then like Bayside has just been continuously releasing music too, and I'm like,
Mhm.
wonder if that's any good.
Yeah, and sometimes the best part about going and seeing those nostalgia bands, because like a couple of years ago I saw Bayside, but they're doing an acoustic set, and there's a singer called Kaylee Goldsworthy that played on there, and like she's put out some phenomenal music. Like I picked up her little EP she was on at the time. She's since then done like a full length album, and I'm like, man, it's nice to like find some new artists from, you know, just like being stuck in your curmudgeonly old like ways of like, here's the songs I used to love.
Yeah, it's like they know what their fans need. So it's like, you know what, we're gonna do the work for you. We're gonna bring new people in on our album because we know that's what you're listening to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a collab a few years ago that I have a ton. I have it on a fuck ton of playlists. But Oliver Tree did a song with. Well, he did like a remix of one of his songs with too, and it was sick. I don't know if anybody knows or cares about Oliver Tree. He's really weird, but
I love Oliver Tree. He's fantastic.
Some of his stuff, it's very genre bending, but it's the kids are calling it. I've looked it up. They call it hyperpop.
Dude, I have a story about hyperpop.
All right,
You guys
spill
were
it.
talking about you guys were talking about things that make you feel old. As in my decrepit age of 27 years old, me and my band were meeting up with the guy who filmed one of our music videos because he was shooting for a band that was on tour. And they were rolling through Atlanta. So we show up and we see the first band. We're like, oh, this is great. This is fine. And then another band comes on and they don't have a drummer. And they're playing to like a drum track and they have like a synth player, a bass player, and then 2 lead singers. And I think that was it. And they start playing hyperpop. And everyone is like going off. They are super pumped. And I'm just looking at my bandmates and we're like, we don't get it. What's happening? We're like, is this what the kids are into these days? Like, I mean, I can get with it, but like, I don't know if I really like it.
Yeah.
I think
some of them are hit or miss, but Oliver Tree's definitely like some of the songs I'm like, all right, this sounds like there's very much pop punk influence in here. And then some of it just sounds like, I don't know, just modern hip hop mixed with, whatever else he's listening to. Like, it gets pretty crazy. He did like a country album, like.
Yeah.
That
he
wasn't
just
really
dropped
country, but it was very country influenced, obviously. It was interesting.
Yeah, that's the one he recorded at his grandparents' house during COVID. And he just dropped a new record here in the last month or two, I think.
Yeah.
It's pretty decent. And yeah, he's one of those artists he's like the Dr. Octopus of modern music, because like the haircut he's got, he totally looks like the Doc Ock version of like with that bowl cut, like split down the middle. Like he's got this whole thing. But the thing I think I like the most about him, he's like just so completely 100% himself. And he's just not afraid to be as weird as he wants to be in his music videos. Like he just doesn't care what anyone thinks, and he owns it to like the next level. And you're like, you can't make
He's
that
also
up.
one of the biggest internet trolls out there and is completely full
Yeah.
of shit about almost everything. And he's on, I watch a podcast, H3 podcast, big
Yep.
fan.
Yeah.
And he goes
Same.
on there all the time, which if you're a fan, may I bring up real quick, because it's sitting on the desk.
Yeah.
Extreme Ghostbusters VHS tape here, right?
Dude.
The thing
yes.
about this is the episode Back in the Saddle, Part 1.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best episodes. We all know, the one rewatched. Written by Larry Swerdlove. Dan's the producer of H3's dad. Because his parents are
Wow.
writers.
Dude.
That's crazy.
That's insane.
Crazy
that's very
lore.
Cool.
Yeah, his mom worked on like Muppet Babies and shit too. They were like
Oh,
writers
wow.
in the early
That is
90s.
cool.
Yeah, that's
cool.
that's epic. That's
But
like
he goes
such a
on there
great
all the
story.
time, and they have like a faux conflicts and stuff. He really knows how. He's hilarious. But Surf Curse had an album come out last year that I was completely unaware of, and I know I showed Justin that band a long time ago because they're like sort of like garagey surf punk. If you haven't ever listened to them.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
they're kind of the
Right.
modern take on that, right? And so I think they fit in there very well. Yeah,
But
that new
they're-
album is pretty good.
There's a lot of like, it's almost like you ever listen to the band Teen Suicide?
Nah.
I haven't heard
It was
of them. No.
they're a lo-fi band from like
Okay.
10, 11, 12 years ago. People used to listen to them and like Elvis Depressedly a lot.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's a great
I
band name.
I was big into the lo-fi bands because I was kind of doing like lo-fi, like new wave and stuff at the time. And
Okay. Cool.
yeah, I don't know.
It's
Fun stuff.
well, yeah, I think you just got to keep up on the new music, right? And you just got to be influenced by that. Because I think like even as an artist, like when you're doing drawing or if I'm doing digital art or stenciling something or just throwing something together, like you got to have that music in the background, or even prop making, right?
Oh,
Like
100%.
that soundtrack just
100%.
carries you. So
I even like I just went to the comic shop day before yesterday because they had an event that they called it the Halloween Fest, which is just like a bunch of artists and zine makers and stuff like that come through and just had a bunch of really cool stuff for really cheap. And like I literally walked out of there with an armful of stuff, and I spent maybe like $20 total and made a whole bunch of new really cool artist friends. But also um one of the things that somehow I ended up talking with them all about was just that idea of like, making playlists and soundtracks and stuff for your projects and being able to like have it be this like deeper way to identify um with a character or with the story as a whole or with you and like the mental and emotional space you were in when you were making the story. And it just like I love that kind of stuff, even if it's not official. If someone's like, yeah, this is the music I was listening to while I did this, I'm like, give me, I want to know.
yeah, I think like James Gunn is the prime example that comes to mind that most people would understand at the mainstream level, right?
Yeah.
With the way he put together the Guardians soundtracks and like all the songs he left off of there, because obviously he had to wind it down to what actually fits in the movie, what they could get the rights for. But I would love to see his full playlist for like
Oh yeah.
what he was listening to while he was writing that, because I think that really it shapes something to another level that if you're not in that creative world, you may not understand. But I think you could still appreciate that, like to kind of hear those influences and see how they might change the dialogue or fit the tone there.
My hot take is that the third Guardians has the best soundtrack.
Ooh,
Hot
okay.
take.
Full disclosure, I feel like someone needs to take my MCU nerd card, but I haven't seen Guardians 3 yet.
It's all right.
Oh man, I'm so behind on all that stuff, man. And I
Just
feel ashamed of it because there was a time where I was just like, there's a new thing, I need to stay up till midnight to watch it or go to the theater or whatever. And I'm so behind now. Like
I
I'm
haven't
not
watched
caught up.
any.
I haven't watched any of Loki season 2 yet.
Nope. I haven't watched Ahsoka. I didn't watch Andor. I'm like,
Oh man,
damn.
I loved Andor. Like it's one of my favorite Star Wars things. And I've watched all of Ahsoka except for the last episode. Also, another one of my favorite Star Wars things. Like I think, as long as I watch the last episode, I'm like, yeah, this is just as good as the rest of it. I think top 3 Star Wars for me is like Rogue One, Andor, and Ahsoka. Yeah.
I'd say that's a
Nice.
fair assessment. Like at least I can agree with that because I enjoyed Ahsoka quite a bit. And like I never watched Clone Wars, but I watched a lot of Rebels.
Yeah.
Right. So I've been going back to try to finish that up now, but I really appreciated what they did with that. And then like I'm on Loki, but I cosplay as Star-Lord. I got a Star-Lord tattooed like on my Marvel like tattoo selection so far. And I had to see that. And I would say the nice thing about that, it was nice going into a Marvel movie that wasn't going to shoehorn itself into anything else. It was just allowed to be its own thing about these characters. And that's what I love the most about the third one. It really just let it breathe and do its own thing.
That's what I'm excited about, seeing him take over DC as well. Like I think he has always been really great. James Gunn has always been really great at walking that line of like acknowledging and being aware of like, yes, this is a bigger universe. Yes, even outside of this story that I'm telling, there may be consequences or things that it kind of has to be influenced by virtue of being in this universe. But I'm still going to make sure that this story is about these characters first and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you ever see the Belko Experiment?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I rewatched that recently. It's on Tubi for free. Shout out Tubi. I love you. Sponsor us.
Yeah.
Tubi's great.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Belko Experiment is great. Like it's such a dark movie, but it's so fascinating to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just had to bring it up. He wrote it. He didn't direct it, I don't think. Yeah, he didn't direct it, but he wrote that one.
I mean, and you see his influence though. You see his style and like his writing style is influenced by the music he's listening to. You go back and watch his Dawn of the Dead remake, and you totally get those music vibes. And you're like, this is something you've always done, maybe not to this extreme level by having a soundtrack that's curated to fit in hand with the movie release, but like you can tell that's his style and he sticks to it. And I think it really shows in anything of his you watch.
I was about to say, I can remember 2 music cues from Dawn of the Dead. That's it. And they are The Man Comes Around, Johnny Cash is like the opening credits, I think. And then the Richard Cheese cover of Get Down with the Sickness, the piano cover that plays later. That's it. That's all I remember music-wise from that. But that's something.
Yeah, but I think if you go back and watch this and you pay attention to the music, knowing that it's James Gunn, I think you kind of get a better understanding of like his writing style. At least the last time I watched that, I could totally cue in on that. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think it's when you know that it's him going into it, like, it's like that's your cue to be like, anytime you hear a song, you're just like, okay, what does this song mean though, other than it being cool that it's in this part of the movie?
Yeah, like, is this just a cool music cue, or is this like something you actually listen to over and over when you're writing this scene?
Yeah.
So,
well, a weird thing is what's that song called? This Is the Day by the that's in Volume 3. It's also in Empire Records, and that's where I think of it from. So I'm hearing it in a new movie, and now I it's one of those things that I've heard it so many times associated with that movie. Now when I see Guardians, I think of the other movie when I'm watching it.
you know, that happened to me too with Rubber Band Man, because it was in Infinity Wars, but I know that from Stripes. And so like I see Infinity War and I think of Stripes every time. Every time that music comes on, I was like, oh man.
Same.
I remember on a Feeling.
That one's good too.
I was just gonna say it's in Reservoir Dogs. Go ahead.
I was gonna say Rubber Band Man. When I was younger, my parents had one of those like Lifetime funk compilation CDs. Rubber Band Man was on there, and then I think recently after that we watched Stripes. So that's like always what I think about too.
Yeah, like
so seeing it anywhere else, it's like, whoa, a little out of place, but I'm here for it.
Yeah, and then in my brain, I'm always like associating. I'm like, okay, so like my love of all these 80 movies is justified with my love of these movies, because these things like all connect, like in my weird brain, like they're all spider webbing together, and I'm like, we're all trapped in the same web here, and it's great.
It's the same thing as like, I can't, like, obviously he's an amazing actor and he's been in so many things, and like all of them are memorable and he's great in all of them, but I can't watch anything with Ernie Hudson in it and not go like, oh, Winston's in this.
Yeah, exactly. Like I remember the first time I watched The Crow, like that was exactly the thing that went on my head. I was like, oh, Winston's in this, and you're like, oh, that's Ernie Hudson, but you're like, yes, okay,
yep,
same concept.
The Crow, Congo is where I forget that he's Ernie Hudson. That's the only one.
Yeah,
it's just because he's doing an accent. I'm like, oh, it's gone. It's not Ernie Hudson.
Oh yeah,
but it feels like I don't know. Watching that movie, he just looks so much. He must have just been working out a lot between Ghostbusters 2 and then, because he looks fucking massive and huge and just like a monster. And I'm like, damn.
Well, and is it even that? Like Ghostbusters just doesn't ever show off his physique, right?
What? Yeah. It's wearing baggy clothes, and it's like, I don't know. He could just be next to puny people in Congo too.
Yeah, that's true. But you think of Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2, like you very rarely see him out of like a nice suit jacket, or
in his uniform,
the jumpsuit. Yeah, and so you're like, but the dude is ripped, and like he still is to this day. So like I think that's how he's always been. When you just didn't appreciate it until Congo, you're like,
especially when you see him at conventions and he's just wearing like a Ghostbusters t-shirt or something. You're just like, oh, okay, dude.
Yeah. Exactly. You're like, I should probably work out more, because you're in a lot better shape than I am.
And he's what, like 70 something? I don't think he's quite 80 yet, but it's like, oh man.
Yeah. Like I think he's like 78. So like,
yeah.
All right. So let's talk Ectober a little bit. We've talked a lot of amazing, awesome stuff, but it's October and it's Ectober. So if you missed out the last time they did this, I got the delivery of the book that was made. Now, the only thing that this was missing was a CD because, nobody uses those anymore. So if you're going to do this proper next time, you need to release a 7-inch that goes along with this with the music on it.
We're
That would be
actually
cool.
gonna do a wax tube.
Ooh, nice.
I'll have you know I bought a
That
CD
way-
today.
Ooh.
Halloween
I'm not saying I don't-
party music from 1994.
It's got to have some gems on it.
It's all covers, but Monster Mash, Ghostbusters, Time Warp, Macho Man, Bad Moon Rising, Purple People Eater, Rock Lobster, Soul Man.
All the classics.
I guess that's like a Shang Tsung
first-
should cover Soul Man.
The
Yeah.
first thing I think of when I think Halloween, Soul
Yeah.
Man.
It has
Exactly.
to. It's like Stealing Souls, Disco Inferno.
Yeah. Imagine that, just like Grim Reaper doing a strut down the street, and you hear people just like shrieking and dying in the background. I'm a soul man.
I mean, that sounds like a scene from Bill and Ted,
Yes, yes.
right? Like straight out of that movie. You're like, he's death. Here he comes.
Coming to you.
Oh man.
So you guys have done this project again. You're partnering up. John, I know you said you've done a lot of the traditional art here that you've released, and Jeremy's done all the fun visual edits, right, to make this kind of like more of an immense piece, just like you did last time. So what was the influence on circling back to this, and like how long ago did you start on this to get ready
Jeez,
for
Scoob.
October?
Oh man. Let me think. I mean, honestly, I'm pretty sure shortly after we finished the last one was when we first started saying, like, what should we do next time? Like, we should do this again. Where do we pick up after this? And I think generally speaking, we brainstormed on and off. And then, like, life happens, and before you know it, 2 years have passed, and we've moved and gone and done other things and all that kind of stuff. But it was never something that was far out of our heads. In all honesty, like, I think it was last year, there was an attempt, like, we walked right up to the line of doing it again, to the point where, and it would have been an all different storyline and everything. Jeremy had actually almost finished making a whole new theme song, which is not the one that we use this year. So that might be something that we revisit or like go back and tweak a little bit again. But it's something that we've constantly been thinking about. I built a whole, the genesis of Ectober was really just like, I wanted to have an outlet to do Ghostbuster stuff. And the first year that I tried doing like a month-long challenge, I think it was 2014. And I did Inktober, and I think it was Drawloween. And those are two like big art challenges that a lot of different artists do during October. And they have prompts. And so what I did was, like, I would take the prompt from Drawloween and the prompt from Inktober, and then come up with like a Ghostbusters thing I could draw that used both of those. And because I'm me and I can't ever let anything just be easy and I have to like add layers to it, I ended up thinking like, hey, let me tell a story with these. Like, not only am I going to try to use multiple prompts from two different things, but I'm also going to connect them all and make it a story. And I think it ended up just being like Sam Hain, showing up and trying to cause chaos. But it was like each day, like each drawing ended up being Ghostbusters in a different city. And so it felt like there was just this wave of like Halloween related spectral activity sweeping the nation, heading toward Halloween. And then at the very last minute, like the last image was a team finding where Sam Hain was and being able to defeat him. And so I had a lot of fun with that. And then I think I did that a couple more years and eventually made it to 2020. And that's when I was like, I should just make my own thing, especially because I had gotten more into digital art and that kind of stuff. And once I kind of had that idea of like making it my own thing and not feeling like I had to stick to those parameters of like using ink and paper or anything like that, I was like, well, if I'm gonna just do what I want, like I got to get Jeremy in on this if he's available. Like I want him to be able to have some fun with this too, and I feel like that could turn out really cool. And I didn't want it to be something because like I can sit here and churn up Ghostbusters story ideas all day long. But I wanted it to be something that could be kind of throwaway in the sense that like it wasn't going to be something where I did it and then at the end of it I look back and I was like, man, that was really good, this is such a good story, like, and then kind of have this moment of regret of like, oh man, if I'm ever in a position to like pitch for a Ghostbusters comic or anything like that in any kind of official capacity, like I hate that I already did this and like put it out there in the public because it's probably not something that I can now bring and like do as an official story because it's already been done. And I ended up just boiling it down to this idea of like, what if it's just Ghostbusters versus movie monsters? And even more so, like we know we're getting, like at that point we knew we were getting Ghostbusters Afterlife and that it was going to like, you know, move things forward, and that I'm sure a lot of things were going to spin out of that. And like now we know they're working on a cartoon and an animated movie and the sequel's about to come out. So I figured like it was probably a safe bet to use movie monsters because I doubt there's ever going to be a reality where there are officially licensed Ghostbusters things using officially licensed movie monsters, you know, all in the same spot all at once, because I feel like the royalties would be insane for that.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't think like Blumhouse would ever be able to pick up the rights to Ghostbusters, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so it was that. And then it was also, you know, let's use the real Ghostbusters, because odds are whatever the next animated thing is that they do, it's probably going to be brand new, right? Like it's either going to be its own thing or it's going to be in continuity with the movies, so it can kind of be like a connected universe sort of thing. And so that was my way of like playing it safe and being like giving myself a box to be like, as long as I stay in this box, I could do anything, and it's not going to be like, oh, I should have saved that for when I maybe really get to do the thing. But again, because it's me, you know, in between the first one and the last one, we, you know, for that first one, we kind of, between me and Jeremy, came up with this idea of like, oh, what if the reason that there's all these movie monsters attacking is because there's a cult and they are using a broadcast signal in a derelict, you know, public broadcasting station to open a door to the netherworld, and because it's all TV and movie stuff, it's like movie monsters are coming out. And so in between that one and this one, I cooked up this whole backstory about like, who is this cult? What are they all about? Why are they doing it like this? Is there a reason it only happens every Halloween? And I just went down the rabbit hole. So we're sitting on like, I mean, we've vaguely plotted the idea of like, after this, there's at least two more like big sequel, you know, chapters and one more in between thing. Cause we kind of look at this one, Midnight Run, is like an in between thing. So you've got the first one where it's like the main Ghostbusters team up against movie monsters, and this one is like, imagine it kind of being like a mini series that takes place between movies kind of thing, where it's like it's not necessarily the main characters, and it does continue the story, and it is important, excuse me, but it has its own vibe to it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So, Jeremy, what was it like coming back to this and jumping in on the music again? Like, did you already have some like things you just set aside and like, you know, musically, like I know I dabble things down and record and like just kind of save it for later. Sometimes you're like, oh, I'll come back to that when I need it. Like I'll know when I need it and I'll get to it.
I think I pretty much started fresh with this one. We had been talking about the vibe that we wanted for this Ectober for a while, and that's usually how I go about writing stuff. Is I'll sit down and I'll just be like, all content aside, like what are you feeling when you're like working on the project? What are you feeling when you're consuming the project? And we just decided like it's that old 90s anime OVA VHS that you got from a bootlegger, or it just ended up in your house somehow. And then we looked at the kind of things that we used to watch when we were kids, like exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
No,
Yep.
totally. Like it's that exact feeling of just like it's such a specific vibe. You keep going about it, Jeremy, but like he's holding up the tape and I'm just like, the memories.
The label. It's great. But yeah, it's definitely like especially when I approach writing different songs. I was watching a documentary where the edge is like, oh, when I write, I don't write about like a subject. When I write, I go to like a location in my head. And that's kind of like what I aim for, whether it's a location in time or a location geographically. Like I really try and encapsulate all that in the composition. So I know for this one, it was like a lot of saxophone research, lots of like MS DOS computer sound, trying to get clean samples of that, and getting the right synth tones for that juicy 90s synth driven like anime opening. And yeah, other than that, I just kind of dove in head first and tried to pull as much Ghostbusters and as much Ectober out of it as I could without getting in trouble.
Absolutely.
See,
Yeah.
That's really interesting. The like stuff you're talking about there, getting the interesting sound effects, because I did an album and I was trying to make my own like chiptune sounds. So I downloaded a Game Boy emulator and LSDJ and learned how to fucking use that just so I could, just for the album. But it was a pain in the ass. I mean, once
Yeah.
you got used to it, it was usable, but
Yeah,
that's
I
always
know.
fun.
For me, I always, in the moment of making a song, for me, it's the text to speech synthesis engines. Like I'll find one really good one that I like to use, and then I will completely forget about it until I need it again, and then I'll have to go find another one
Yeah.
because none of them work exactly the way you want them to.
I should send you. I did an album that's called it's Justin's favorite album that I did, but my band was
The
called
Dream
Another
Detective?
Green World.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's basically, instead of Spirit Detective, Yu Yu Hakusho, it's Dream Detective.
Ooh, okay.
Nice.
So that's what the EP, it's like 5 or 6 songs that sound like synth pop and industrial and like 80s, big time 80s. I don't know how to put it. Like I literally, when I finished recording the music, I bounced it to cassette and back, so it sounded like it was a cassette tape.
That's cool.
That's
Every
very
track.
cool.
Nice.
And like, it's
What
just very interesting because I kind of like had that same aesthetic of like a VHS of like old anime, and I was thinking of the ones that I would watch, and at least on Toonami, you know, like Yu Yu Hakusho
Yep.
is probably one of my top 5. So
Yeah. No, that was a big touchstone for us when we were thinking about this, is because that's how we got into anime. That was you know, I'm sure I've told the story so much that people are just repeating it after me now, but the summer after 6th grade, my mom let me stay up late for the first time past midnight, and I saw Gundam Wing, and that was a rabbit hole that I never came up out of. And so there was like pre-Toonami, like my life pre-Toonami and my life after Toonami, and those are still probably the biggest influences on me creatively. And so when we were talking about this stuff and bouncing ideas back and forth, you know, we were like, high up on the mood board and the influence board was like the introduction, like the opening credits of Gundam 0083 Stardust Memory and Cowboy Bebop and some other stuff too. But it's just it's totally trying to recapture that feel. Like Jeremy was talking about, writing about a location or like putting yourself in that kind of location. And for me, when like the place that I always went to in my mind was just being 11, 12, 13, staying up past midnight, everybody else is in bed, and you've got the volume on the TV turned down to like 4 so you can hear it, but it's not too loud for everybody else, and it's the only thing illuminating the living room, and you're just sitting there watching Gundam or Outlaw Star or Tenchi Muyo or Cowboy Bebop or something like that, and just like relishing in it. Or like I know that even during the school year, I wouldn't be allowed to stay up late necessarily, at least during the week. And then I wouldn't be home early enough to watch it on just like normal afternoon Toonami. But my parents would stay up late and they would record, episodes of 8 the Mess Team for me. And then when I got home the next day, I'd be able to watch it on VHS. So it's that kind of stuff. And to that extent, like it's not just the vibe of like the actual anime that is from that era and that's indicative of the 90s, but it's also like now just the sounds and the visuals of like a VHS tape going into a VCR and the VCR starting up and then like the tracking lines and everything like that is part of the experience now.
Yeah. I feel like, do either of you, I know Justin doesn't have this. I think but do you ever have, are you familiar with, and do you have like a Synthesia?
I don't know.
Where you
might
can
have to
kind of
explain it.
see, where you can see and visualize sounds basically as either colors or shapes and shit like that.
Yes.
Okay, I
don't
figured
know
you
if
might,
have
because I
that,
have
but
that.
I've definitely had like, it's like my brain wants to visualize sounds in the sense of like almost like if you were picturing like a wave format or something, or like if you're looking at like a screensaver that is like sensitive to sound or something.
Yeah, that might explain some of it for sure. That's kind of what it's like, but it's, it's just like in your mind's eye or whatever.
Yeah. I remember that's how I would, when you were teaching me how to play Never Take Friendship Personal, I would have certain images that popped up in my head for each note, and I just never had any idea why. I just let it
Okay.
happen. Like, I think G, for some reason, in that song was this weird, like, turquoise vase that I'd never seen before in real life.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, now I have like it's a lot clearer and it helps a lot more, like crafting those spaces using notes, I guess. And like depending on, I mean, I'll always go somewhere when I'm playing, even if I don't necessarily have that like actual hard theoretical context going through my head. But I know when I go back, I can draw these lines in between like different scales and things. And I'm like, oh, I definitely see this image concretely when I'm playing in this key or this scale or anything like that. So definitely I have like an imagery and music synesthesia.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I don't have any of that awesome stuff, but I know Alec was explaining that to me. I'm like, okay, that explains like some of the levels he gets to with the music and the way he composes things. And then, going back to his Dream Detective EP, there's a song on there that's basically just got that like rock and riff of Hot Night from the Ghostbusters soundtrack, where he just got that like that riff.
It was
that
influenced
groove.
by that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can tell because it's like it hits though, and I think like that EP feels so out of time for itself that it feels like it should have come from a different era.
Yeah.
That was the goal.
Yeah.
I know that when Jeremy sent me when he first sent me the Ectober theme song, because that's for this one, part part of the fun is like knowing that he's working on it, and he's like sending me, shots of like his computer screen. He's like, guess what this is, and it's like this one track line that says like Gundam Twinkle or something. I'm like, I don't know, what does that mean? And but it was funny because like on my own end, because he's pulling audio influences and musical influences from certain things, and by the same token, like from similar things, I'm pulling visual influences, and I'm starting to do the sketches and the drawings and stuff, and I am doing it at my desk and on my TV. I'm watching, Bubblegum Crisis and Pat Labor and some Gundam and just all that kind of stuff from that era. Lots of mecha anime and things like that. And I remember when he first sent it to me, and I sat and I just like closed my eyes and I put on my headphones and I listened to it. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And then the second thing I did was like I literally had Bubblegum Crisis on the TV, and I muted it, and then I pulled up the song again and I played the song, and then just like hit play on the show. And like Bubblegum Crisis isn't Ghostbusters, it's not about paranormal stuff, but just the aesthetic and the vibe and all that kind of stuff fit so well with the music. And I was just like, yep, I think he got it. I think it works.
That's fun for it all to come together. So you said you're using synths. Are you using soft synths, or are you using any like vintage synthesizers, or how are you composing this stuff?
It's all plugins. I'm a broke boy.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
I have a couple of vintage synthesizers, but I haven't bought one in like over 10 years. But I have like an old Juno
Oh, nice.
from 1985. It's like a home market version, so it doesn't have a sequencer built in, but I hook it up to MIDI through the computer and use the computer sequencer, or whatever I got to do. I think some weird shit. You ever seen an Omnichord? I have one of those.
I have. Dude,
Super
that's
fun.
awesome. Those look like a lot of fun.
Those have just been re-released again for like the 75th anniversary. So if you're looking to find one, they've got some specials of those out now.
Oh, I guess the time is now then.
They had the Z, I think it was called the Z Chord back like 10 years ago. You could still buy them new. They've been making them the whole time, but they kind of turned it more into an educational instrument. But I found out about it because Brian Eno used one, and that's who I named my band after, was his album Another Green World. And then
nice.
I saw My Morning Jacket live, and the motherfucker had one strapped around him for one of the songs, Touch Me, I'm Gonna Scream Part 2.
Nice.
And then apparently lots of people built songs off of that thing. Like I saw stupid rambling here, but it's a TikTok of the guy from Gorillaz.
I was about to say the same thing.
Yeah, it's just a preset.
Yeah. Oh, what's the name of the song? Is it Dirty Harry? Is that the name of the song? Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, Clint Eastwood.
I was close.
Same concept, right?
Yeah. He just presses the preset like drum loop button on the I think it was the Omnichord, and it just starts playing the exact song. And then there's a button where you can like play the drum break so that you can like go to the next section of the song, and it's the same break that they have in it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
That's the beauty of that stuff. The last synth I bought, it's called a stylophone. David Bowie famously used one on a couple of his songs. So I found it like just browsing on Amazon one day as like a thing, and like they released a David Bowie version with a little case, and I was like, you know what? That's really cheap. It's really kind of cheesy, a little thing to have, but I'm gonna get one of those just to have.
Yeah, those
Just
ribbon
take a
synths, the ribbon synths are super fun. I have the Korg Monotron, the Duo, and like the delay one, and those are
The
super
little
fun.
ones.
Yeah, the tiny ones.
Yeah, I have like the space looking delay one.
Same.
It's all over my fucking albums all the time.
Dude, it's so fun to play with.
It's so good. And I was gonna say that Ryan Eno probably produced those albums that he used those on. He produced his the trilogy of like Low, Lodger, and whatever. What's
That
the
makes
other one?
sense.
Either way.
Yeah, I remember the only reason I know of Brian Eno is through Robert Fripp.
Mm.
That's it, because I was obsessed with all of his guitar nonsense.
If you listen to, if you haven't before, his album Another Green World, there's a song called St. Elmo's Fire and then a song called Golden Hours, and they just have the craziest fucking guitars I've ever heard in my life. Like it's like avant-garde from 1975. And it sounds like it sounds like music you'd hear from an indie movie from like 2004.
Nice.
Like it's wild. It sounds like a soundtrack.
It's way out of its time. Like, you know, like someone snuck into the future and was like, hey, here's what I'm going to do. It's like that scene in
Yeah,
Back
like-
to the Future. Hey, you know, hey, your cousin Marvin. And you're like, oh, man. You know, like that's what that feels like.
And he's composed a lot of parts of that with just an omnichord. And then like Phil Collins plays drums on some of the songs. It's ridiculous.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I went back and listened to Genesis recently, and on their self-titled album, there's a song called Mama. And I was just like, this is just In the Air Tonight pre-solo work. It was like the In the Air Tonight demo. And I was like, I got to get my hands on whatever drum machine he was using, because those sounds will forever be embedded in my brain.
Yeah. All my old albums, I just used samples of old drum machines. So like, I was like, man, what drum machine is Prince using on Purple Rain? Because I'm going to use that, but I'm going to play the drums parts like they're Joy Division drums.
Oh, nice.
But it's, you know, like that was the whole thing I did. I was like trying to combine Joy Division and Prince on an album. But like,
that's actually a great combination.
Oh, it was fun. I tell
Nice.
you, I'll send you my Bandcamp. You can stream all the stuff on there.
Yeah, please do. I mean, that's kind of sort of what I like, trying to match the gear and the samples and the different things that people were using as close as I could with like the limitations that I had. I know the main synth that I was using was modeled after the synth that they used in Saving the Day by the Alessi brothers. And basically, if you listen to the Ectober theme song, it is right after the intro. It's some bastardization of the chords from Saving the Day in that same synth tone, with the Extreme Ghostbusters riff, but in the little twinkles from the Gundam Wing intro, and like some drums that I randomly made up. It's just like layer upon layer of like influences.
I know what you mean. It's like our theme song has the like the drums I made are pretty much like the first like intro drum part you hear in the New Order song 1963.
Nice.
So I pretty much just yanked it.
So let me ask you this. So you guys were working completely independently of one another? So like John, you're drawing over here, and Jeremy, you're working on the music. And like, did you guys continue the project after you've like started sharing what you've done, or did you kind of like leave it independent so it wouldn't overlap and it was just like two things that are designed to go together that are just going to come together?
I think we definitely go back and forth sometimes, but this go around with the Ectober theme song, like we had conversations about influences and the kind of things that were just kind of sparking the whole idea, and like we got like, you know, to some degree like philosophical about it, like and because it's the kids picking up where the adults left off, and it's a commentary on nostalgia versus repeating the past, like that kind of stuff. And then like, oh, and it makes sense because it's like kids who like everything's going to hell and they stumble across a robot and decide to fight the good fight, so it really is like Gundam, which ties back into like all that kind of stuff. But like literally, like once we had a couple of those conversations, Jeremy just took it and ran with it. And the first thing he came back with, I was like, no notes. No notes at all. And like Jeremy, like he's not someone who's like, you better not have notes for me. Like I could have been like, this is really good. You think we could tweak this a little bit to do this? And he would be like, oh yeah, and then I can like we collaborate really well. But when he brought what he brought, I was just like, yeah, that's it. Like I couldn't come up with anything more I would want if you asked me to. So literally like from the moment he said like, hey, I finished it to everything you're seeing and hearing now, like nothing has changed about the music.
That's awesome. So are you going to be able to do a print book of these later on?
That's the goal. That is definitely the goal. And we were actually just talking the other day about kind of
All right.
continuing those levels of like celebrating the influences and the different things that led us to want to do this Ectober chapter the way that we're doing it. And the first one from 2020 really was just like can we do this and what would it be like and how will it turn out. And this one, now that we've kind of we've got that under our belt, and then we decided we wanted to try some new things and stuff with this one. We were talking about just some really cool ideas on how to do a sketchbook and how to present that and like ways to maybe package it and just to really sell that vibe of like everything that you're getting from what we were inspired by and what we've been trying to communicate with like the visuals and the music and stuff, and just seeing that through to like its ultimate version of that. So we've got some fun ideas in store for that kind of thing.
You know what I would love to see?
What's that?
Is how the old storybooks used to come with like a cassette tape?
Yeah,
Yep.
That's what I would
that
love
would
to
be
see.
cool. That would be
I mean,
cool.
it would also, it'd be an extra cost, obviously, but cassettes are cheaper than records, or I would recommend records.
Yeah,
True.
that's true.
No, and it's era appropriate, for the whole like 80s, 90s kind of vibe too. So
Yeah.
that would be
Pop
cool
it in
for
your
sure.
Walkman.
Well, we
Yeah, so are
we
you gonna have
talked about. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask Jeremy, are you going to put the music up available for download like last time?
I definitely will. And we also did another short thing when they announced who was going to be doing the voice of Tobin in the video game.
Yeah,
Okay.
for Spirits Unleashed. Yeah.
Yeah, I did a little song for that too, and I think I might throw that in there and make a little 3-song bundle. You can get the first theme song, that song, and the new Ectober theme song.
Yeah, that'd be
and
awesome.
that was really cool too, because that was just like if you know me, like one of my favorite parts of like Ghostbusters lore is Tobin and Tobin's Spirit Guide. And so the fact that they got someone to actually do the voice of Tobin for the game, and it's like an actor who I really love, Rahul Kohli. Like if you haven't watched The Haunting of Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, I literally just finished watching Fall of the House of Usher. Like those are all fantastic, and he's in all those. But he did the voice of Tobin for the game. And so I drew a picture that just, it looks like, it's a comic booky cartoon version, but it's him as Tobin. And, he's got like a lantern and it's illuminating like a whole bunch of like tentacles and ghostly arms and stuff coming out of this, giant book, and I posted it and I was like, oh, I want to do the time lapse of like, here's me drawing it, but I wanted to put some music behind it. And so Jeremy jumped in and cooked up some stuff, and it was that same kind of thing where it was like, I think I came to him and I said like, hey, like I have this image in my head of Tobin kind of like the lo-fi girl, just like sitting there studying and it's just on a loop, but it's like Tobin and he's doing it by lantern light, and it's like just outside the lantern, there's all this creepy stuff, but he's just diligently like taking notes on all of it. And that was like the vibe. And I said, can you do like Victorian era lo-fi? And he did that, and it was brilliant. And then I had one note, and it was like a way to, like we were talking about, just add this extra layer of like, and now it hits even harder as like a piece of Ghostbusters music. And when you hear it, it's the from the original movie soundtrack. It's the dun 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 dun, but it's played on a harpsichord
And that
against
Oh,
like,
nice.
and but the whole track sounds like it's coming from like a old school like Victrola,
yeah,
record player kind
it's
of thing.
this like low synth choir on the bottom, and like that. I think I didn't actually have a harpsichord plugin, so I used like a clavier and like a actual piano, or was it? No, it was like a one of those plucked, like they're like, oh, this is the like Middle Eastern instrument pack, because
Oh
they
yeah,
like
I know
to
what you're talking about.
package them like that. So
Mhm.
yeah, I had to layer a couple different sounds to get that, but it ended up turning out real nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So where can everyone find you online if they're not already following you? Hopefully everyone already is if you're tuning in, but we still want to give you the chance to shout out everything where they can tag along and join the party.
Jeremy, would you like to go first?
Okay, I am at Yarkuba on Instagram, Yarkooba. And I'm pretty much only on Instagram, so don't try to find me anywhere else.
Nice and simple. Nothing wrong with that.
And for me, I am at John Yurcaba 4. So JOHNYURCABA, and then the number 4, pretty much across everything. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, I guess, Twitter, or the social media formerly known as Twitter, now known as
Yeah.
X.
Yeah.
It's still Twitter
Blue
on my
Sky,
phone.
if there are people, it's so weird. Like even now, like as it's changed branding and everything, you can still see like it still says stuff like, see what everybody else is tweeting about, and I'm just like, this is not. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Um,
Like that's yeah.
but I was
I
just
feel
gonna
like
say,
in
yeah,
100 years, like that's the
any.
type of guy that becomes the villain that you like write stories about
Oh,
because like he just doesn't know what he's
100%,
doing.
Yeah.
100%. But yeah, I mean, across, like if there's a social media and you type in at John Your K before, I'll probably pop up. So that is where you can find me.
Excellent. Well, any final thoughts, Alec, here before we wrap this thing up?
You know, families are tough. Sorry. You were just I thought I was on Jerry Springer for a minute. Jerry's
Yeah, I know. I
final
wanted to throw
thought.
something too. Yeah.
There you go.
Alec's final thought.
You know, families are tough. Sometimes everything doesn't always work out the way I don't know, man. Like just
And sometimes some moron brings a cougar to a party that goes berserk,
yeah.
which has a
Okay,
whole
who
new
brought the dog?
it has a whole new context in 2023. Like I really wish they'd update that joke in the movie and like have some cougar at a party and it's like a 60-year-old woman like inappropriately
God.
dressed. Like, come on now. You can revisit that. It's aged
Oh man.
so strangely.
It's like a children's
Oh,
birthday
wow.
party. It's like a
Yeah.
bounce house and a clown.
Exactly.
A true life goal was realized when we went and saw that site for the Afterlife premiere, and I had you film me running across the street saying, "Help! There's a bear in my apartment."
That's
and
amazing, dude.
then I jumped over the ledge, which
Oh,
is
that's
much
great.
lower on the other side, by the way, by like three extra feet. And
man.
and then he said, "No, you got to do it again."
Jeez.
I didn't get it. Yeah.
Dude, that
Yeah.
trip was so much fun. Like, had you guys been to New York before that?
I
I'd been
hadn't.
once in 2005. So it was like post 9/11. So the vibes are still really weird there.
Yeah.
Like the firehouse, like wasn't like I went by there, but no one was like touring it like as a Ghostbusters thing at the time. Like it was just out of
Yeah.
the pop culture zeitgeist, unless you're a diehard. So like seeing what the firehouse does now and seeing what it looked like when we went there for Afterlife was just wild.
Yeah, that was the Afterlife premiere was my first time being in New York, period. So just in general, like I'm not just geeking out about Ghostbusters. I'm geeking out about like, um going and getting pizza at Joe's Pizza because Joe's 29-minute guarantee is a promise, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just, all the stuff, like seeing just everything about New York. And I love big cities in general. Like I'm a sucker for big cities. But yeah, just seeing the firehouse and the hotel and all that kind of stuff for the first time up close was really cool. I remember one of the coolest things was just getting to go into the library and just sit there. And I didn't even realize how close I was to it. I was behind the library. There's a park, and then right on the other side of the park there is like a little Japanese bookstore that I was in. And they have like all kinds of books and manga and stuff like that. So I was in there geeking out, and I came out and I had this book that was like have it on my shelf over here. It's called Anime Architecture, and it's just all the background paintings from stuff like Ghost in the Shell and Evangelion and Pat Labor and all that kind of stuff. And I, for like a few minutes, I sat in the park and I was just flipping through it and reading it because it was nice outside, and then it started raining. And I almost decided to like book it back to my hotel room, but then I realized like, oh, the library's right here. And I went in the library, and it was the first time I had gone in there. So just being able to like sit in the reading room and just like soak in like, oh wow, like being able to like pull up screenshots on my phone and just look like 3 tables ahead of me and be like, that's literally right where we meet Egon. Like he's underneath that table listening through a stethoscope, and then Peter comes up and drops all the books, and I'm like, that's the table right there. And so yeah, it was just really cool to like be in that place, and just all of these locations, especially like the firehouse that we've all just have had this like I mean, it sounds cheesy, but it feels like a religious mecca. Like they all mean that much to us, and then you see it and you're like, I'm here, I've made it. This is the special place. I'm here for the company picnic.
Yeah, exactly. It just feels so real, and like you're like, these places are actual places you can go visit, right? It's like something that's really there, and so being able to go do that's pretty awesome. Like I know,
well, it's especially surreal too when you see it and it's like your first time seeing it, but then they actually have like the sign hanging off the front of the building, and it's like, wait, I knew this was a real place, but now I feel like I accidentally tripped into like a fictional world, and this is Ghostbusters headquarters.
Yeah.
What was cool about some of those locations too is they were in other movies, so it was like,
oh yeah,
we're over there doing the Louis Tully thing across from Dana's apartment, and I'm like, wait a second, this is exactly where in Ninja Turtles Raphael knocks down those punks and flashes them his sai.
I think that's the same movie theater he's leaving, like, right? I think that was all shot very close to there. So I'm not sure how long that AMC's been in operation there in one format or another, but I'd imagine like right there by Central Park. Yeah, that's pretty high likelihood that was it.
We went to, Columbia University, and I'm like, wait a second. I didn't think about this before we got here, but like Spider-Man was shot here.
Yeah.
And so we're doing all of like the call it fate, call it luck. And then I'm just like, I want to be like, I'm something of a scientist myself.
Columbia and the Statue of Liberty are the two. Like I saw the Statue of Liberty from afar, but I didn't go visit it. But Columbia and the Statue of Liberty are the two places that I didn't see last time. So if they have another premiere there, and I'm lucky enough to get to go to that one, those are high on the list for sure. Because I would love to. I did that when I lived in LA. The Biltmore is there, which is the Sedgwick, and me and my wife moved there, and literally that was we had family who lived there. One of her cousins took us around and was just like, let me show you guys around the city now that you live here. And we stopped there, and literally I was like, you got to take a picture of me here in front of the elevators. You got to take a picture of me walking through the door. You got to take a picture of me. It just, I was insufferable.
We stayed at the Biltmore when we were there for FanFest.
Oh, that's cool.
We stayed 2 nights and we blew our fucking load financially, but
Yeah, that
it
was the one thing. Like, we should have just stayed one night because it would have been cheaper. But like, just to be there the whole time, I was like, "There's no other hotel to stay at that makes sense for my first time going to LA and
Oh,
seeing
for
all
sure,
that stuff."
for sure.
You know, I was like,
Nice.
"Yeah,
Well,
No, dude.
for our
I
New York trip, I like in advance. I just looked up every Ghostbusters filming location I could and ranked them in order of like importance, and then put them all into my phones as favorites locations, and was like, "All right, we're gonna make a loop here. We can walk all of these locations, and we'll take a cab here, and then we'll do like it was all planned out."
That's awesome. Now, when I when I went to New York, literally like I stayed with I shared a room with Austin Young and then another guy and we literally like I found I was like, what is the cheapest but best reviewed hotel I could find? And it was great and it worked out really well, but it was literally like a super tiny hotel room with like bunk beds and stuff. And I was like, you know what? We are from out of town. We're here to celebrate Ghostbusters. This really is just going to be the place where we sleep at the end of a long day. We're not going to be hanging out in here. Like when we're not in here sleeping, we're probably going to be like, let's go to the library. Let's go to the firehouse. Let's go do this thing. So this works totally fine. And it was super affordable. So I was happy with how that turned out. But
yeah,
it was,
absolutely."
it was a fun experience for sure.
Well, hopefully
Jeremy, you're
we'll
going
be
to have
all.
to come next time.
Yeah, you'll have to come out there for the next one because that's going to be March, assuming everything goes well.
Ooh,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, because that's what we're looking at, kind of planning ahead for that. Is like, okay, that's March. You know, like I think that's going to be a big thing, and I think knowing everything we know now, it'll be a lot easier to coordinate with other folks out there. Like, you know, we ran into some people, but you know, I think we'll be able to spend a little bit more time with other folks next time.
Yeah.
We ran
Coming
into Tony Taylor at the library.
Mhm.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was fun.
Yeah,
And it is cool too. Like once you're there and you are kind of like you're seeing all the Ghostbuster stuff, but you know that like other people are also there for the same reason. So even if you didn't coordinate with them, like you show up
Yeah.
at the art museum and you're just like, oh hey, that's that's Bob Anderson over there, or hey, look, I'm over here at the firehouse and so is here. And then we hung out with Craig and Abby and Jake from Yes Have Some and that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
it genuinely does feel kind of like you're all coming from all over the country, but then somehow, which it's obvious it's because you're all there for the same reason, but like you show up in the biggest city in the country, but you're still running into all these
into
people,
people, you know. Yeah,
it genuinely feels like we are taking over.
Oh, well, yeah. At the YHS event, it was crazy. We were in one of those like a racing game, 4 seats. And I looked down and I'm racing Justin and Jerry, who was our friend who came with us. And then Charles Fincher's down there. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, I know you.
yeah, and
Oh,
we,
man.
you know, like I'm vegan and so is my wife, and so like we went to a vegan restaurant in New York, and like sure enough, like there goes like AJ, Abby, Craig, and
Yeah.
Jacob, and you're like, oh, okay, they're there, and it's like, hey, here in passing, it's like everyone was like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like like you say, you're in this like insanely large town, and like you're all still crossing paths like unintentionally just because everyone's there, kind of doing the same things.
Yeah. I remember
would-
Jeremy came for the Los Angeles premiere of Answer the Call. And we were all they had the pizza party thing on the roof of the theater or of the wax museum, I think. And then they were like, okay, everybody, it's time. We're getting ready to go see the movie. But we were in line for so long. And Jeremy was like, I'm kind of hungry. And like right across the street, in LA, they have like
Oh
the
man,
little like hot
the
dog carts
Colorado
everywhere.
dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm gonna go get a hot dog. I was like, yeah, you'd go for it. And he ran across the street and literally like I'm sitting there watching him like leaning over the cart, watching his hot dog be made. And he's like super excited for it. And then the line starts moving. I'm like, Jeremy, we're going in. And I saw him just like his heart broke. Like, I'm so sorry. I can't eat the hot dog. I gotta go watch this movie.
Oh man.
So I promise you, if you come to New York, we will allocate adequate time for a hot dog.
Yes, please.
Yes.
The street food is what I need. It's what I need.
Yeah.
Well, if
Street
you're
food and pizza.
anything like Justin, he'll just abandon you to wait in line while he goes to an Italian restaurant.
I don't remember what you were doing, but for a period of time, I was just waiting in the line with Craig and Abby, and I forgot who else was there. But I was, it was like, I lost my older brother. Can I hang out with you
I
guys?
don't remember.
Yeah.
So that's how I got acquainted
man.
with them.
Yeah. So the afterlife line was so long, so my wife got hungry and she's like, hey, let's try to find something to eat. And so there's this like little Italian bar around the corner, and I was like, hey, let's go check it out. If anything, we just go get a drink. And then we were able to sit down at the bar and just order a real quick meal and share it. And so like it really helped warm us up because we didn't like wear our flight suits that night. So it was like, okay, we're a little cold.
I honestly preferred the fact that we like, if both premieres were fun, but if you ask me which one I liked better, like I will always prefer to be like in the cold and layer up. So I had on like a hoodie underneath my uniform, and we were outside and it was chilly, but you're like shoulder to shoulder with everybody and you basically know everybody there. So it's not like, oh, strangers, this is weird. And so it was fine. But I remember the Answer the Call premiere, and just like it was sweltering. It was so hot.
Yeah, I think this March date's going to be really, really nice in New York City. Is what I'm thinking.
I think that'll be pretty pleasant because it won't be too hot, but it's probably not going to be like snowy or anything.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've kind of been long-winded here, so let's wrap this thing up, and then really appreciate you guys joining tonight, and we look forward to seeing the rest of Ectober, and obviously seeing everything you guys are doing and catching up again here in person and in March next year. So,
absolutely, man.
Definitely.
Thanks, fellas. Hope you have an excellent night. So,
you as well.
To return some videotapes. To return some videotapes.